Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan. I am a former member of the World Mission Society Church of God. I was a former member for about 15 years and a few months. I was baptized in the year 2003 in the month of August. This is my video of my testimony of how my experience was being a former member of the church. First of all, I want to say that, the people in the church, they're really cool people. I do have a lot of friends, from the church that I love dearly. And I hope that this video doesn't, damage any relationships or anything like that. This is a video just so people can really think freely for themselves, and not be trapped in um, the kind of I don't want to say brainwashing, but kind of like brainwashing that the church does to people, because a lot of those people, and I still have family members that still live in fear because of what this church teaches. Again, I was a member for about 15 years. I had left the church last winter, around late November. I just stopped going to the church, because everything, it just didn't feel right. From looking online about how, it was just about everything, about court cases, about how An Sang Hong had kids, and just all that information. I've been looking at it throughout the years, throughout actually about 5 or 6 years. I've known that some of that information. I've just been living in denial. Being in the church, I was really in denial, trying to deny those facts, but they're facts. I can't escape the facts at all. So I just wanted to, again, share my experience, and uh, give my opinion on how my whole experience was. Again, from being a kid, growing up in this church, from the kids group, all the kids that are in this church, they are not they are not hidden from the teachings of this church at all. Um, all the kids in this church, they are almost like being force fed these teachings in this church. And it's kind of sad because as a kid myself, i couldn't I didn't grow up freely thinking, uh you know having like a freedom of choice of what I could believe in, because I was always taught that it's either our religion, it's either this way or the highway. You either do what we do or you're going to end up going to hell. And there was a lot of times where I even had nightmares as a kid because of what we were being taught in the church, having such a young mind. We were shown many videos about how the world is going to come to an end via, nuclear war, or a meteor is going to come down and strike the earth, or, videos of how, like, mother says, oh, no video games. As a kid, that's something, we like to have our little hobbies and things like that. And, video games, of course, was a big part of, the culture as being a kid. And oh, and I had my own little game systems and stuff, but always living in fear, like, oh, I'm gonna go to hell if I touch that controller. It wasn't a fun way to live. Being a kid again, growing up to be, a teenager, social media started coming out, and then there was this whole thing in church where we were told, you cannot have any social media accounts. Satan runs social media. But now when you look at today, the church has, many different social media accounts promoting, their propaganda. Um, but yeah, it's funny. Years ago that they were saying no social media accounts, none at all. Satan runs social media, and now the church themselves has social media accounts, and then so my story is, yeah, from being a kid to the student group, it was really difficult. I could say, um, a lot of the activities, even in school, I couldn't participate in because, like, it was maybe holiday based, or something like that, to where I had to tell my teacher, like, oh, I don't celebrate this, I don't celebrate that, I need to be removed from this activity. Yeah, growing up as a kid in the church, it's really some people may not see it, but it can be really stressful because all the kids in the church, they are really being force fed the gospel that they teach. Um, and then being a teenager, of course, it gets even more difficult because it's a stage when some of us become, let's say rebellious, and then let's say some teenagers become rebellious, which is only our nature. We like to explore, and then we become rebellious, and then leaders in the church, they would shun some of the teenagers because they were being rebellious, and then yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of situations to where a lot of teenagers were shunned in the church because of some of the rebellious ways. Again, being in the student group as a teenager, um, as I turned about 15 years old, the pastor in the LA branch, because I'm from the LA branch, the pastor in the LA branch allowed me to go preaching. So I had my first experience going preaching when I was about 15 years old, and that was in the year about 2011, around 2011, 2012. So as I had my first experiences preaching, I saw how we would pick and choose who to preach to. You know, we would basically judge a book by its cover. If we saw a person that maybe looked gay, we wouldn't even approach him and speak to him. And I always kept that in the back of my head, like that doesn't seem right. Um, we never really went to apartment complexes in poor areas to go preaching. We always went preaching to rich neighborhoods. Most sometimes, rich neighborhoods. We will usually go to malls and campuses, and just me preaching from about 2011, 2012, all the way up to I left around last year. I always, in the back of my head, I always had a problem telling people, basically approaching them, and the first thing that I noticed that, when we go preaching is that we would say we're from the Elohist club or on campus, and then we have a club on campus and we're trying to spread, we're trying to, invite you to a meeting, to study the Bible some more. We're a Bible study club. And we would even say that when on the campus there was no club. On some campuses there were clubs, actual legit clubs, the Elohist Club, but in some other campuses we would say that, but we wouldn't even. There wasn't even like an established club on campus. In the malls we would say, "Oh, we're from the Elohim Academy." Um, trying to disguise ourselves, saying that, oh, we're just doing a little survey. But then, as the conversation would carry on, as we were preaching to them, it ended up becoming, if you don't believe in God the Mother, then you can't go to heaven. You cannot be saved. So it was really conflicting to me, where I would have to tell these people knowing, who grew up believing what they believed in all their lives, just for us to approach them and tell them that what they believe in is wrong. You know, that what they believe in is wrong. What their moms taught them was wrong, and that if you don't believe in God the Mother, then you can't be saved. I just didn't. I didn't. That never sat right with me. Even though I went preaching, hundreds and hundreds of times, preaching to people, trying to preach, God the Mother, she's from Korea, and things like that. Um, just telling them, arguing with some people, um, yeah, just never sat right with me. Uh, yeah, so even from when I was about 15 years old, going on mission trips, going preaching, things like that. You get to see that whole side, and how you're really just trying to recruit people. It's all it comes down to. It's like almost a competition. You're just trying to recruit people. You're trying to bear fruit, right? You're trying to bear fruit, and then if you don't end up bearing fruit, then you're looked at as a bad tree. People may not say it, but the pastor will be giving sermons. We'll throw little hints here and there. Oh, you're a bad tree if you do not bear any fruit. If you cannot bear any fruit, or you cannot bear any talents, then you're a bad tree. So there was a lot of times where I didn't, bear any fruit, and then I would have to live in fear with myself, thinking, "Oh, am I a bad tree? I'm gonna end up going to hell because I cannot bear any fruit." And then, you'll be going throughout your week, and you're always living in fear because you're taught in the church that you're responsible for all these people's lives, that you have to preach to every single person that you run across, or else you're responsible for their own, for their own destruction. It's like their blood will be on your hands because you didn't preach to them when you had the opportunity. So you're always living in fear, like, oh man, I should preach to this person. If not, then I'm responsible for this person's life. So a lot of the tactics that the church uses, a lot of the teachings is really based off of fear. And that's what keeps a lot of people in, because oh, if I don't keep if I'm late to a service, not that's going to look bad. If I don't keep this Sabbath day for a certain reason, for in my case, I was playing sports in high school, so I had events that I had to go to on Saturdays, but I had to miss them. Or sometimes I did go to those events, and then I would end up being rebuked in church, saying, "Oh, you're choosing that over father and mother." So it was a lot of things. Even when I became of age to make my own decision to join the military, I have a family member who is a deaconess in the church, and she is really pressuring me not to join the military. Of course, because she cares about my safety, but second, because I wouldn't be able to keep the Sabbath day. And also, she had the Pastor John Lee from the LA branch talk to me. He said no, straight up no to the military. All of the older brothers in the church talked to me like, no, don't join the military. Father's coming soon. Really discouraging my decision to join the military. But I said, you know what? Forget it. I'm not going to let these grown people tell me what to do. I'm going to, make my own decisions in life. And thankfully, I joined the military. I had a really good experience out of it. And now I'm going to school now using my GI Bill. So I'm really thankful that I was able to, join the military and have that kind of experience. However, so I was in the military. I was in the Seattle branch for about 3 years. You can really see like the churches are ran a little bit differently. Uh, Pastor John in LA has this more like strict and almost military type like demeanor, and then the overseer in Seattle, he was like all super loving and kind. He was really super genuine. Um, but then when I came back to LA after being in the military, I came back to the LA branch. I moved back to Los Angeles. And the Pastor John, he made me a group leader. He was very excited that I came back. I went in the military. I didn't fall away, right? I didn't fall away from the church. So he made me a group leader, and over 25 members. And this is when I started seeing how the church was really ran like a business. The church, as I was a group leader in the church, I was told we had to make monthly reports, for all of our members in our group. So in the youth group, which was members about 18 years of age all the way to 30 years of age, we had to make reports on who were attending 1 time a month, 4 times, or 12 times, how many services they were keeping a month. Again, 1 service, 4 services, or 12 services. Who was preaching 1 time, 4 times, and 8 times a month, and who was also tithing as well. So what made me feel extremely uncomfortable was we were told to check our members' envelopes to see if they were tithing. Because I asked, how do we know if they're tithing? Oh, the missionary told me, look in their envelopes, and if it looks like they're giving 10%, then mark them down as they're tithing. But if they're only giving like $1, $5, you know that brother has a job, then don't count that as tithing. So it made me feel extremely uncomfortable that I had to look in their envelopes, which is, in my point of view, is none of my business to see what's 10% of their income. It's none of my business to see what they're making. So that made me feel extremely uncomfortable. And I have a lot of PowerPoints and spreadsheets that basically looks like, a business monthly report. That's how it looks. Um, Also, when I was a group leader, we came up with many ideas of making like various point systems of, for our members, like points for preaching, points for how many people you preach to, points for how many fruit you bear, points for, for how many services your fruit will attend, how many of your fruit actually tithe. So there was a lot of point systems when it came to, bringing people in. And when you brought people in, you had to make sure that they were tithing and all this kind of stuff. So again, it really didn't resemble a true church. Like 2,000 years ago, Jesus wouldn't tell his disciples, "Oh, you get this, you get a prize for, bringing this many people." It's supposed to be only strictly just blessings in heaven, right? But clearly there was a point system that, that at least in our youth group, that was taught, um, to be used to motivate the members, or, things like that, to preach, not truly not 100% out of genuine love, trying to save people. Yeah, it's just a lot that went on in the church. Is really time consuming too. If you wanted to become a leader, there was requirements to, preach a certain amount of times a week, a certain amount of times a month. You had to complete all the sermon books, right? You have to complete all the sermon books. You had to attend, right? You couldn't miss one service. You had to attend all the services. So yeah, it was a lot. And also, I have a family. I'm married with a son with a he's almost 3 years old, and around the time when I was a group leader and about to become a group leader, I worked 9 to 5, and then I would go to church, eat dinner, and then go preaching. Which preaching started from 7 to about we would end preaching in the area about 9 o'clock, and then I wouldn't get back home until about 10 o'clock. And that was preaching was Mondays. Tuesday we kept service in church. Wednesdays we're preaching. Thursdays we're preaching, and then Friday we were encouraged to go help out clean the church. So we had to actually go to the church to help out clean. And if you didn't go help out clean, then you were looked at as is there if you have been to the church before, the mindset of, of sonship and the mindset of slaveship. So if you have that slave mentality, then you're working only to, you're just working just to work. But if you have that sonship mentality, then you're working because you're cleaning, and you're working, for your father, because you want, this is all yours. So you want to make it clean. You should feel joyous to come to church and clean, right? So there was a lot of things, and then recently, like, a few months before I left the church came out with this video. It was basically like a huge fear tactic video of of explaining, like, oh, if you're a member, but you cannot be playing video games. You can't go out and drink. You can't, no foul words, foul language must come out of your mouth. All these things. It was like this huge fear video that basically, it just, after the members watched that video, they're like, oh man, that was so powerful. We must make sure that we don't fall into those kind of temptations. And you see how it's like all the members are being controlled based off, they're living their lives in fear. I see a lot of, they claim that, families weren't torn up, or, friendships weren't torn up because of the church. But I've seen, even in my own experience with my own family, there's been rifts. There's been rifts. That came in between. That caused my family to become separated to an extent. The family that still goes to the church, still communicated, but um, communicated with the rest of our family that doesn't go to the church. But it became far less often. It became far less often. Being in the church, you're not. Um, when we first came into the church, it was, no, don't celebrate Christmas at your family's house. Don't go to your family's house for Christmas, Thanksgiving, or anything like that. And then about the time around 2012, when all the when stuff started being exposed about the church, and they're like, then the church started saying, "Oh, spend time with your family." They try to basically hide, the fact that they did tear up a lot of families. Even the church started to do community service practices and things like that at like starting at like around 2010, 2011, when stuff was being exposed. Before that, it was no community service. No, we never had any blood drives or anything like that, at least in the LA branch, which is pretty huge branch, in the church. We didn't do any community service, no cleanups. We didn't hold any blood drives or anything like that. But until the image of the church started to be questioned, that is when the church started to do community service and blood drives and things like that. So you can see it really resembles a cult, how it really tries to save its face. It really tries to save face, doesn't really want to look bad in the community. And so many times the church brings up, oh, the Queen's Award. We're the only religious organization who received the Queen's Award. We're the only organization who received the award from the Queen. But when you look at the actual when you research the actual award, there was about 200 other organizations who received the award at the same time as the church did, and 8 of those organizations were religious organizations, and one of those religious organizations were Catholic. And if you know about this church, you know that it's all about bashing Catholics and bashing Babylon churches, things like. So overall, that's pretty much. I have a lot to say. I have bullet points and bullet points and bullet points, and all these points I want to make about the church. I will make separate videos. I will continue to make videos. Just again, kind of like again. I just want to expose the church for who they really are, because in my experience, I wasted 15 years of my life, my childhood, my teenage years in this church, my early youth years in this church, and I just want people to think freely for themselves, because the church doesn't allow you to think freely for yourself. The church wants you to think only one way, and they want you to stay off the internet. Don't research about the church. Don't do any kind of research about the church online. Only look at the Bible. Only read Father's books. Only read these books that we give you. And I just want to help, along with along with a lot of the other people I've seen make videos exposing the church. We just want people in the church to think freely for themselves. We just ultimately that's what we want. We know that there is a lot of corruption, happening in that church. So that is my video for today. Again, more videos will be coming out, just diving deeper into my experiences within the church. I really thank you for watching this video. Just share it and like and subscribe. Thank you very much.